Rent prices have increased more than home prices. So we're seeing a gain of 25% or better on rentals. So the quick answer is no, because rentals are just outpacing the market altogether. I wasn't sure, you never know your audience, so I didn't know if you guys were going to come with experience, a little experience, a lot of experience. So does anybody want to know what it takes to get started as far as, okay, what it takes to get started? How much money do I need? Those things. Okay. Now, let me ask. So when I was thinking about this class, I was thinking about people are going to want to learn how to invest in rentals for like long-term rentals. And I wasn't even thinking until we started talking that some people may want to talk about investing in Airbnbs. Anybody want to talk about Airbnb? Okay, all right. How many people are wanting to do long-term rentals? Yeah, long-term. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of put it in perspective, so when we say long-term rentals, we mean your average renter is probably going to be 6 months to a year plus, whereas Airbnb could be a weekend stay to maybe 30 days at a time. So that's what we're talking about for short-term and long-term rentals.
Yeah, we've got some great opportunity here in Greensboro because we have all of the hospital systems and we have traveling nurses, and I know clients that have Airbnbs that that are getting a lot of income off of traveling nurses, and they come and they stay for 2 weeks, a month, and then once you've built rapport with them, every time they come back, they want to stay at your place. So it's a great way, but some people don't want to do Airbnbs because you have to get them cleaned, you have to, change sheets and, furnish a property. So, I have a group of investors I've worked with for 14 years, and what you start with, you don't have to end with. They started buying houses, condos, townhouses, all kinds of things. Now they found that their niche is townhouses. They love townhouses. People say, well, townhouses, they have HOA dues. Yes, but houses come with what one person's clean, nice yard is to what a clean, nice yard is to one person is not always a clean, nice yard to someone else. So you get letters from the city that says you're not mowing your grass, you need to clean up your yard or whatever. I went to 2 properties of theirs this week that the renters have moved out, and the house inside, perfectly fine. Needs a little touch up, clean up, that kind of thing. The yards were horrific. That's why they prefer townhouses, because they don't have to worry about those letters. They don't have to worry about, because they like to keep, they're not what you hear, like bad landlords or whatever you call them. They like to keep up their properties and that kind of thing, but when you're renting, when you're a landlord, you don't necessarily go over and mow your person's yard every week and clean up the bushes and that kind of thing for them. Like I said, when you start, you may want to dabble in a little bit of everything. You may want to do some Airbnb, you might want to do long-term. Then after a while, you find your niche, or you like it all and do it all, which is great too. So the other thing too, is there anybody in here that's looking to buy a rental property somewhere else, like vacation rental? Okay, all right, so personal story. Tiffany in the back says, personal story, I just bought my first home at Emerald Isle, and I also sell at the Crystal Coast, Emerald Isle, Morehead City, that area, Beaufort. But I was able to buy, and this is very common in my area that I sell in. It may be common in all areas, like all beaches, I don't really know. But in my area, it's very common that the house like mine was built on pilings, so you've got your main floor, beds and baths, but you've got an apartment underneath. So for me, what I'm gonna do, a lot of people, when they talk about investment property, talk about buying doors. So basically I bought 2 doors. I can rent the upstairs and I can rent the apartment. So 2 forms of income. But the way I've estimated the income for Airbnb is that what I'm getting for the apartment is going to pay my mortgage. So hopefully I don't have to rent the upstairs, and I can keep it for when I go down and work, or my friends, family, you know, whatever. So be a little more selective in the rental for the upstairs. But so that, if you're interested in that, you know, that's another option. So so anyway, any other questions we need answered today, and then we're going to get started. Okay, so Lacey, do you want to take like how much money down? Kind of get us started on how much money down, what, just basic, and then we'll take that basic, 15% down, you know, the number she gives us, and we're going to play that scenario out on this house, this townhouse for Bartholomew. Good idea? You like it? Okay.
Can we write the numbers on the board, or you want me to
Perfect.
just talk out loud?
Yep.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. I'm Lacey. I'm from Stokesdale. My husband and my dog and I live there. And I work for Right Value Mortgage, which is Fidelity Bank. My office is around the corner. We do a lot of investment properties, second homes, primaries, townhomes, condos, all the things. So Kim invited me this morning to kind of help you guys run through some numbers and scenarios. So,
Oh, can I interrupt you for a minute?
yeah, of course.
So, you guys, Lacey is the one who helped me buy my investment property at the beach. And so, what I love about Lacey and her company is that they have all kinds of options. You're talking, what are different options? How do you find the best loan program? Well, a good lender that has all the things can guide you to what, because she guided me to what worked best in my scenario, with my income, with my goals. So,
Right,
go ahead, sorry.
let's go. So, like Kim mentioned, because I am with the bank, we have the options to do loans on the secondary market, which means you sell loans off to end investors. That's common in the mortgage world, or we can keep them on our books as on portfolios, which is what we call it. So that kind of gives us some options on financing. Max loan to value when you go to buy an investment property is 85%. So anything above 80, some of you may know, you will have private mortgage insurance, which is called PMI. So you will have PMI for a few years because you'll be at 85. As soon as you get to 80%, that goes away. Usually when clients come to me and say, hey, I want to buy an investment property, the first question I ask is, tell me what's important to you. Are we wanting to put a bunch of money in it up front so you can make the max amount of profit? Or are we wanting to put money in it up front, or keep money in your pocket? Are we needing to renovate the property? Things like that, because that's where the down payment questions are going to come to play. So if you guys are wanting, let's say the house needs a little bit of renovations and you're going to need a paint and need a landscaper and things like that, maybe you don't want to put a lot down. So we could only do 15% down. So that's our max loan to value. Is 85%. And you would have PMI. PMI is mostly generated by credit scores and things like that. We'll run through the scenarios typically to see what does your mortgage look like with PMI, what does it look like without PMI, what makes the most sense there. But if you guys are wanting to keep money in your pocket up front, you have the option to just do 15% down. So this house, do we want to look at the sales price and kind of run through what the loan amount would be and the payment?
Let's just talk about the basics. 85%, and now Tony, if you want to talk a little bit about this house, and then we can run the numbers. So if you want to stay there, Tony's going to talk a little bit about pros and cons of buying a townhouse, buying this townhouse,
Right.
what that looks like, and educate us a little bit on that.
Yes, so one thing to keep in mind when looking at a rental property or an investment property is what ancillary costs are you going to have for keeping this property? So for instance, with a townhouse, the majority of townhomes in the Greensboro area normally have an HOA due of somewhere between $150 and $250 a month. This one right here, we can actually see on the screen, right up here, is $213 a month. Now, it is a bit of an out-of-pocket expense. What does that HOA fee gain? The HOA is going to take care of the exterior of the home. So siding, things along those lines, roofs will be taken care of by the HOA. In some instances, if there's a fenced backyard, they may take care of the fence as well. But they also take care of the landscape. So that's going to be trimming the bushes, mowing the grass, like Kim was talking about a little bit earlier. Those are some of the things that pay through the HOA fee. They also carry a master insurance for the property. So usually cost of insurance is a little bit lower when you're in an HOA community or when you're in a townhouse or a condo community. Now, that may also be covered by the HOA. Some do and some do not. So you may have some HOAs that will actually cover water and sewer and take care of your trash. You may have some that only cover the trash, but your water and sewer on your own. It really depends on what type of community there is and how they set it up. That's why it's very important. Every HOA, whether it's a townhouse community or a condo community, they have what are called restrictive covenants and HOA documents. Basically, what that will do is that'll tell you everything that is covered. It'll tell you what's not. So while you own the specific unit, for instance, a lot of condo communities don't allow Airbnb. A lot of them are looking for at least 30-day rentals. So a weekend rental or something like that isn't always the best way to go in a condo. However, townhouse communities, for the most part, don't have limitations as far as length of time for rental and things along those lines. That's one of the bigger benefits with townhouses versus condos is you have a lot more flexibility with the type of rental. Condos and townhouses, you've got a lot more flexibility with your extra costs for maintaining the exterior of the home. But single family homes tend to be the most lucrative because they rent for the highest price. Usually those homes are going to come with more available parking. They're going to come with a yard, which is going to be a bit more sought after, especially by people who have families or their animals, things along those lines. But there are extra costs that come along with those residential detached homes. How are you going to maintain the yard? How are you going to maintain the exterior of the home? If it needs a roof or a new HVAC system. Things along those lines you want to take into account before you start the process of actually renting the property out. It's always a good idea to know exactly what kind of condition the property is in before you start letting other people into it. Because that will give you a better idea of how much maybe you should keep in reserve just in case something happens with that renter.
Okay, so why don't we go through, so I can tell you, this is just general, not always the case, but what Anthony was saying, most of the time when your HOA dues, like I know this property well, my investors buy in this neighborhood all the time. We have about 30 in there. They do cover the water and sewer and all of that. There's a sister property off of 68, their HOA dues are about $165 a month, but they don't have the extra benefits. So you can, if it's a little bit higher, you're probably getting more for it than you would be with a lesser HOA, if that makes sense. So let's just walk through this property. Tony, we were talking, Lacey was talking, 85% down, 85% down, 85% loan, 15% down, because maybe you want to keep some money in your pocket to do some updating, painting, carpet, and all of that.
Right.
This particular property, if you want to scroll through the pictures a minute, I can tell you, The flooring they did 2 years ago. The flooring they did 2 years ago, the countertops, you may want to change those. You may want to change the appliances, just to make the property more appealing. The carpet, so I asked the agent, now this is just a side note, y'all forgive me for a minute. Why would you take a picture that the floor looked nasty? Because the floor's not nasty. So you need to take a picture. But that's just a side note. The floors actually look good in this particular property. You may want to do some painting in here. Everything else looked pretty good. The carpet's in good condition. So say you needed to put $5,000 in for appliances and paint. Okay, so let's walk out that scenario if we can, Lacey.
Okay.
So $189 is the property, is the list price. So we buy it for $189. Lacey, how much money would we have to have down?
It's $28,350 for the down payment. So let's say, and y'all, I'm a numbers person, but I have to see it all. I'm also visual. So this is our purchase price. Okay, we're gonna put 15% down. Let me tell you our loan amount here.
66.
Mm-hmm. So this is how much we're gonna finance. Is the $166.50. That's gonna be our loan amount.
Any questions so far? Y'all want this to be interactive, so if you have questions, just speak up. Okay, so far you see $28,350 down, then $166.50
Mhm,
be
is
our
our
loan
loan
amount.
amount. And real quick, let's just touch on the down payment, because some people, especially on a primary residence down payment, where does this money come from? It can come from a 401k, an IRA, from your checking account. That's it. It cannot, on an investment purchase, it cannot be a gift. Can't be a gift from family members or anything like that. No gift for investment properties purchasing. Or obviously no cash. No money in the gun safe or under the mattress. It has to be seasoned in your checking account for 2 months. So that's a good tidbit just to remind yourself, if you have a family member, this happens a lot, a sister or sibling parent, and they're like, hey, let's go in with ya. I have some money. I'll just give it to you at closing. They need to give that to you 2 months before we get started. That has to be seasoned in your checking account.
Could it come from a life insurance policy?
Yeah, as long as we can source where the money came from, you can use anything like that as long as it's not a gift or a cash deposit. Cannot be a gift for investment purchase.
If someone's going in with you and they give you the cash 2 months in advance, that's okay?
That's okay. Because if it's on your bank statement, we're not going to go back. We're only going to get 2 months bank statements. And any deposits, large deposits, is what we have to source. If it's already in your account, then I won't know about it. Something strategic.
So what about from your savings account?
It can be from yeah, it can be in savings. As long as the money's been in your account for 2 months, we're not going to go further back in 2 months.
So, if you have a private money lender, you couldn't use that for that?
You can't have additional financing, usually. Some lenders might allow that, but on a traditional financing, not typically, not for investment purchase.
What about, equity off of one home?
You can do that. Yep. So this kind of gears us in another direction. I hope that's okay. So if you own your primary residence, and you have a lot of equity there, and let's say you want to buy a double wide at the beach. Well, I can't finance a double wide investment property. That's not allowable financing. So Tiffany can pull all the equity out of her primary residence and then buy the double wide in cash and not even need a loan maybe on the investment property. That would be an ideal scenario because you're going to get the best rate on your primary residence or second home residence.
So basically you'd be refining your primary.
You would do a cash out refinance on your primary. You can also do a cash out refinance on another investment property, on a second home, on your primary residence. You can use that equity just maybe for the down payment. So we could do that too.
And I think you mentioned before you can use the 401.
You can use your retirement. If you're not of age yet to withdraw, you have a penalty, of course, but you can use that money. And a lot of people, you can even take a loan on your 401k. I've had clients do that too. They've done the math and seen that it's going to make sense. They're going to make that money back. I'm not a financial advisor by any means, but if you put the money back in 60 days, you're not penalized. That's a big plus there as well.
Yeah, I'm glad, Tiffany, thank you for bringing that up. That's one thing, a lot of people have tons of equity in their house and they don't want to move. Like, we love our house. I'm a prime example. I've been in my house for 29 years and love my house, whatever, have tons of equity. So I didn't do that for this particular, actually, I'll just tell you exactly what I did. I did a mortgage for a second home at the beach, but then I did take an equity line on my primary residence to do the remodel because the house is a mess. I should put some pictures up there so y'all can see. We've knocked down walls, y'all. I mean, it's to the studs. I'm going down after this class today to do some work and check on contractors and all that jazz. But so the equity that you have in your home, maybe you don't want to move. You love it. You've raised your kids there, whatever, and that's my case. But take that equity out and let it work for you. You know, because it's not really doing anything sitting there.
Right, something I'm doing a lot now, because investment properties, we saw them all kind of come up at one time, right? And then during COVID, they were really hard to find. We're starting to see that market kind of slow down some. A lot of people who already own their investment properties, let's take y'all for example, they might own them free and clear at this point. They're doing cash out refinances, pulling all the equity out of them. So when that market does turn and investment properties are a little bit cheaper, they'll just buy them in cash, which is gonna make them really competitive when that market slows down. So those are some options on financing and down payment.
Okay, so at 160,650 loan amount, what would our monthly payment be? And so we have principal, interest, taxes, and insurance all in the payment, correct?
Correct, if we escrow. So I'm using a rate of 6.875. That's what the rates were yesterday. They're high 6s, low 7s right now for investment property. A big driver on that is gonna be your down payment, your credit score. You're gonna get the absolute best rate if you put 25% down. A lot of people don't wanna put that much money in it up front, and that's okay. Your rate's gonna be a hair higher. We can refinance it later if we need to, but you're gonna be making that income monthly, which is gonna make up the difference. We'll run through that scenario to make sure, it makes sense once you guys get to that point. But
so before you give that number, Lacey, the house, this particular house, I know because we've got some of them, my investors do, rents for $1,800 a month, 3 beds, 2.5 baths, that has a 1-car garage. So
Okay.
$1,800 a month is what the rental income would
we
be.
have estimated taxes and
3
insurance.
bedroom, 2 baths.
3 beds, 2.5 baths.
There's taxes are
Taxes.
$21.92.
You want me to divide it out?
Yeah, do you mind? Sorry, I only got one calculator. So your principal and interest payment is $1,055. A lot of people just want to know what the principal and interest is because they're going to make their renters pay taxes and insurance maybe, or whatever that case may be. So $1,055 for this property, principal and interest.
$183 a month.
Let's just do like $9 for insurance. That's probably about right. So that's going to put you at $1,328 for your total monthly payment. That does not include your HOA. So that's just gonna be your monthly mortgage payment, $13.28. Would you say 13? Yeah, $13.28. Thank you. What was that HOA, Tony?
The HOA was, let's call it $214 a month. And one thing to keep in mind with HOA dues is that there's not going to be a scenario where you're going to be able to roll that into your monthly mortgage payment. You may be able to roll in taxes and everything along those lines, so that gets escrowed and taken out. But your HOA dues are going to be a separate fee that you're going to be paying at any point. So keep that in mind because you're not able to actually roll that into the financing.
So when the lender goes to pre-approve you guys for this property, an important piece is that extra $214 a month. You might qualify for $13.28, but $214 can push your debt to income ratio over the max. So we are really qualifying you off $15.42 a month. That's really your total monthly payment. That's your total monthly expense. Although your mortgage payment's only $13.28, we still have to count that HOA because you guys would be responsible for that. Yes, sir.
Do you get to count potential rent as income?
We do. So, yes, so that is a big factor to help offset this payment. So what we would do, let's say that you have no landlord experience, you've never owned an investment property before. What I'm gonna do is order the appraisal with, it's called a rental comparison. What the appraiser does, when they pull comps to say this is what this house is valued at, according to other properties in the area, they're gonna say the average rent on this house is $1,850. What I can do is give you 75% of that towards your monthly income. So let's say $1,850 times 75%, that's $1,387. So essentially I'm only gonna hit you with $200. We're gonna deduct $1,387 from this payment. We're gonna give that to you as income. So that's gonna help offset. So that's where your real estate agent is gonna come in handy because when she's showing you the property, she's gonna say, hey, I pulled comps. This house is gonna get you $1,500 at least. That's gonna come in handy when we're trying to run through some numbers to make sure you guys qualify. If you own property and you've been a landlord for at least a year and you show that on your tax returns, you show that income on a Schedule E, that will allow me to give you 100% of this income. So I'm gonna give you the full, $1,850 or so. So that's gonna wash out this entire monthly payment. That's where people can buy and buy and buy, and we never have to hit them with the debt because we can show that income is washing out the monthly payment. Does that make sense? Any questions there?
So the more rental property you have,
Almost the
the more
better.
you can buy.
Yeah, so you know the saying, cash is king. That is not a saying in the mortgage world. We do not want cash, but when it comes to rental income, we want to see you're making that money. If you're showing that on your tax returns, all that income begins to wash out, and that's when you can begin to buy and buy and buy. That's when that property kind of makes you the king when purchasing more.
What's the standard debt to income ratio these days?
45 still. I can go up to 50. You have to be really strong. We want really good credit. We want the cash flow to make sense if we're maxing you out. I would say you really want to be between 40 and 43. That's going to kind of give you a lot more leverage on rates and things as well.
What about if you're retired and you're not getting regular income?
If you're retired, so I can use retirement, Social Security, disability, we can use anything like that. If you're older than 62, we can take liquid assets and use that as income as well. So if you're not taking retirement, but you have $1 million sitting in a bank account somewhere, we can use that as income because you have access to that money.
What they told me was, because I did that, I was surprised I qualified, but they basically said that if I had 3 years worth of payments sitting in a cash account, that was sufficient to qualify.
Yes, so that's called asset-based lending. That's not a traditional lending. It's kind of old school banking, but we still do it, especially when it makes sense like that. If you're retired and you have money in an account and you're not necessarily needing to draw income, or you have rental property, we can use that as income, but we can use asset-based lending. If you're of age, that's a great way to qualify.
So, I feel like that was a lot.
That's information overload.
That was a lot. So what questions do you all have from that? Because we've got a couple of people here that are very experienced investors. So what questions do you have?
Is this like an average price of a home like this, like in Greensboro?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I would say this is pretty average. I just did an investment property that was $280. That shocked me. It was in Summerfield and she was going to make the income. That's not common. I mean, I would say typically on investment property, you're looking between $80,000 and like $180, probably the max. I mean, exceeding $200,000, you really better be making some good money on that. Yeah, you want it to make sense. Yeah, you want it to make sense.
So when you're doing an investment property, 15% down is what you're gonna
Is the
have to
minimum.
for the
Mhm.
investment, if you're doing an investment.
Right. If you want to buy a primary home or anything like that, we can go up to 95%. Second home is also is 90. Second home is 90. And let's talk about what is a second home versus investment property. Like we were just talking about, Tiffany, if you're wanting to buy something at the beach, but you're gonna use it, and you might rent it out or you might Airbnb it, but like Kim, her sole purpose was to use that to be her house. That truly is a second home. So when you call me, you don't want to say, this might be investment. No, it's second home, because you want the best deal. That's going to get you the best financing deal, and y'all are planning on using it. So it truly is a second home. If it is a beach house that you might use once a year, but otherwise you're using a property management company to rent it out, that's investment. So we kind of have to say, what is the purpose of this house? Are you planning on using it more than not? Then that would be a second home. That changes the financing.
Can you write off the interest on your federal?
You still, yes, yeah, your interest, even if it is a second home and you Airbnb it, you still can write that off on your taxes. You can still claim that income and use that as a write-off. So that still would flow just like a rental property on your Schedule E on your tax return, even though you're using it the majority of the year.
So when you do like, let's say vacation rental like that, and you use a property management team, about how much is that? Do you know?
How much is the property
To
management?
use the property management.
They're all different.
Yeah, so typically 10 to 15% around here. At the beach, totally different, because we're dealing with weekly rentals. So you're paying 25 to 30%. Because think about it, they have to do more work. I mean, it's a turn every week. And so that it's more expensive. However, something that you would make $1,800 a month on here, you're making $1,800 a week on there.
Yeah, you're making so much more.
So would it be better to use a property management or just kind of do it like on your
It
own, like advertise it on your own?
Yeah.
But then I was also considering like you have to have somebody come in and clean it.
Clean it.
afterwards, too.
Mhm.
So property management, they handle that as well. right?
And the liability to your insurance changes, and I'm not an insurance advisor in any means, but your insurance changes when you use a property management because they take on some of the liability. So you kind of have to work through the pros and cons to see how much money are you going to be paying them and how much time and money are you going to save using them. I would say to make it make sense. But if you don't have time to run there every week to change linens and clean,
Right.
that's where people using the property management team is helpful.
Yeah, and there are companies around now, because Airbnbs have become so popular, that are doing management of Airbnbs. So, and that's local and, the beach and the mountains, all of those. So, so that is an option if you don't want to
Right.
take on that
And
responsibility.
speaking of beach properties, I can finance in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Virginia. So I'm North Carolina and all touching states if you think of it that way. So if y'all found something like at Myrtle Beach and it's in South Carolina, we can still finance that and kind of run through some of these numbers. Yeah, gotcha, girl.
So the reason why I want to move on to another property, a house, but I want you to know two reasons why we're having this class. One, to answer any questions that you may have to help you get started or to continue investing. And two, because I want you to use us. I spoke with Miss Sydney this morning. She drove all the way from Concord. So I told her, if she wants to buy in Charlotte, I don't sell in Charlotte. Tony doesn't sell in Charlotte, but we have friends, colleagues that do, we can connect. But if you're wanting to buy in the Triad or to the coast, we're here to help and we want to be your resource. So if it's questions, call. Hey, I truly want to start looking. Or, hey, Anthony, I want to set up a plan and I want you and I to work together and we want to guide you and help you, even if it's 6 months from now or a year from now, because I love goal setting and then a year from now when you buy a property, celebrate with you. So just know that we're here for all of that. Okay, we're gonna go to this property at 407 Woodrow Avenue. Anthony's gonna talk to you a little bit about that. And this is another property that I've shown. So I'm gonna talk to, and Louisa showed it too to one of her investors.
So with this property over at 402 or 407 Woodrow Avenue, it is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath detached home on 0.2 of an acre, so about 1/5 of an acre, for $127,500. And it was built in 1949, and we've got a few photos to take a look so you can see the total overall condition of the house before we dig too deep into it. So you see that it is a brick house. They did do a sled addition here on the back end. And wood floors, fireplace. This is
Retro bathroom.
Yeah.
How do y'all like that?
We got one of those.
Yeah.
very much to the 1940s, 1950s style. So it's got a lot of the original features of the house. All right. This is the kitchen.
She's a beauty, isn't she?
It's clean.
Uh-huh.
And one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at an investment property, especially something that you're going to be renting out, when you take a look at a house that needs a bit of work, keep in mind you're not trying to update it or upfit it for resale. So you don't necessarily have to go in and rip out all the cabinets and put in brand new cabinets. You don't necessarily have to go in and drop granite countertops everywhere. That bathroom that we saw that's very retro style may still be serviceable. If it doesn't have any issues with the faucets, if it doesn't have any leaking issues, if there's no flooring issues, don't feel like you have to completely redo it. That's a great way to save yourself some money while you're renting it, because the last thing you want to do is upfit this house to the nines, go ahead and get a renter in there, and have a renter who doesn't take care of it. And then you're losing all of that money almost instantly. Whereas if you can still get some useful life out of the products and the features that are already in the house, you're gonna save yourself in the long term, and maybe you change some things periodically versus changing it all up front before you get a renter. So it does have a detached garage all the way in the back.
It was big. Y'all, I don't know if it has the picture of this, but it's got I showed it to a young guy who's buying his first home. So it has a punching bag. It's a perfect spot. He wants to park his vehicle in there. And let's see if it shows. It's got a little man cave there. Oh, it didn't show it. I will tell you, they saved the best for last. Inside that door right there is a shower, and they have the sink inside the shower. So you can wash your hands, take a shower. It was a jewel. Yeah, brush your teeth. Yeah.
Everything all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. So for this property here, I can two things that come to mind for me on this. It would make a great rental because of the location. High Point Central. The other thing, location for Airbnb, and I will tell you why. Because it is one street over from High Point University. And so people come in to visit their kids, they don't have, you go visit your kid at college, where do you stay? You get a hotel. Well, doing an Airbnb is cheaper than a hotel, and you have all of your stay. You've got the whole house, you don't just have one room. So,
Piggybacking off of that, if you are a first-time investor and you were thinking about what type of investment property to start with, you really can't go wrong with being near any college or university. You're going to have a built-in rental base almost immediately because they're always going to be admitting new or returning students. So, and there's going to be plenty who don't want to stay on campus but want to be close enough to where they can walk or bike to campus or something like that. So that can help you out to make sure, especially if you're concerned with vacancy rates or occupancy, having that right next to the school definitely is going to help to make sure that you stay consistently rented.
Tiffany, did you have a question?
Yeah, if you rent by a school too, you will probably rent out per room. Cause don't they do that, like if it's a 4-bedroom house, you can rent out per room?
Yes.
You have a lot more flexibility with it, especially in a home where maybe you have multiple bathrooms, multiple bedrooms on different floors. It does give you a lot more flexibility.
I can tell you I've had parents call and say, my kid is coming and doing their master's program. Well, they're definitely not gonna live in a dorm, right? Most of the time, second year students don't live in a dorm. So anyway, they want to buy investment property for their kids, or they want to find they want to find a rental for their kids. And so, yeah, it's a great, near college is always good. So let's go through the numbers, Lacey. This is 127.5. Oh, you want, I'm sorry.
Let's do. So our down payment's $19,125. Our loan amount's the $108,375. So let's see, what is our monthly payment here? $711. What are the taxes and insurance?
Taxes are about $85.
85. I'll just do 90 for insurance. That's
How do you get your
Oh.
insurance?
So I just do $90. It's a lot of it's depending on the loan amount. So usually between like 150 and 200, you're looking at 75 to 90, depending on the insurance. A lot of the insurance too is going to depend on like if it's a townhouse. Sometimes like the first property we looked at, I didn't get in the weeds in this, but the first property we looked at, a townhome, you might only have to cover walls in, so the insurance might only be like $40. Whereas a stick-built home, you're gonna cover that entire home. So your insurance is gonna be closer to like $85, $95. So that's why I just did $90. So your total monthly payment is only $886, which you should be making a lot more than that in monthly income.
Probably
which is great.
$1,100.
Right, at least.
Yeah. And then if you Airbnb it, you're gonna make more than that. An Airbnb, 2-bed, 1-bath. Well, we have some, so y'all
We
didn't know.
stayed in one, yeah.
Yeah, y'all didn't know I was gonna call on you. So when they were looking for a home to buy, they moved here from California, and they moved here, they came for a month to visit, and their goal that month was to find a house. And so their best option was an Airbnb, because I remember them telling me they didn't wanna stay in a hotel for a month, and they just have one little room, they can't cook, they can't, sit in another area and watch TV or whatever, and an average hotel around here is $200 a night, so.
I think it's about 100 a day.
100 a day.
Yeah.
So 100 a day, if you rent it for 20 days a month, that's $2,000. And look at your monthly.
Any HOA on this home?
No.
No HOA.
Nope.
That's like no. But you gotta cut your grass.
Yeah. So there are a lot of options. So, what questions? This was a little bit more straightforward because we don't have HOA. We didn't, get into some of the conversation. But what questions do you have after talking about this property?
I have a question about the property, but how many years for tax returns do you need when you go through the financing process?
That's a great question. So if you are just basic income, W-2, you work for someone, you get monthly paychecks. I don't require tax returns, only your W-2s and your pay stubs. If you have rental income and we want to give you that monthly income back, I just need 2 years. Because we just want to see the consistency. If you've only had rental income for a year, I'll just get 1 year. But if you have multiple years, we'll get 2 is the max.
Is that guy still interested in that place?
So this particular property went into multiple offers. He decided to pass on it because he just wasn't quite ready. And with multiple offers, it probably drove the price up and all of that. So, and then Louisa, so I didn't introduce Louisa before. Louisa's also on our team. She's an agent on our team. So Louisa's guy ended up not making an offer as well. He was buying it for an investment property, is that correct?
No, for his brother-in-law who's sick.
Oh, that's right. So he was buying it for a family member, but because it went into multiple offers, he didn't even want to get in the fight, if you will, because he thought it's just gonna go way up, because the location's great. So anyway, no, it's still active this morning, so I don't know, it may still be available. But there's more out there. I tried to pick, I could have picked that $70,000 property that we could have discussed, but the truth is, there are very few of them out there. So I didn't want you all saying, okay, yeah, we want to sign up for that $70,000 property, because there just aren't that many. But these are very reasonable subject properties.
They are. One thing you want to consider when you're getting a rental property is what is your threshold as far as price point. Right now in our area, it's very difficult to find a move-in ready or slight adjustments needed property for under $100,000 to use as a rental. There are some exceptions, maybe if it's a smaller condo or a smaller townhouse, you might be able to get to around that $100,000 mark. But really, if you are looking at a detached home below that price point, you can rest assured that it's going to at least need all new systems, a new roof, and it's probably going to have some significant issues on the inside of the property. So at that point, that $100,000 property could easily turn into something that's costing closer to $120,000 or $130,000. Whereas your more bang for your buck comes from starting off with something that needs less work. So if you're going to end up at $130,000 anyway, go ahead and get something that's already there, and that you don't have to automatically drop that extra money into, because this $127,000 property, you can finance the full $127,000 after you pay your 15% or your 20%. Whereas if it's a $100,000 property, you're financing $80,000, now you're coming out of pocket with that extra $20,000 to $30,000 to fix the rest of it. So it's always good when you can use somebody else's money. As opposed to having to use your own.
Correct. And one thing I did want to touch on, and because we had talked about it a little this morning, is the difference when you're buying it in your personal name. That's a residential purchase, whether it's investments like a home primary. If you're wanting to purchase it in an LLC, that changes everything. So keep that in mind if you're looking to form an LLC for tax purposes. You can always finance a property in your personal name, quit claim it after the fact to the LLC for tax purposes if you want to, or you'd have to get a commercial note on the property, and that changes your down payments, your rates, everything. So that's something just to keep in mind if you're looking to buy multiple properties.
What is it? At a very high level, what does that do?
What does putting it in an LLC do? It technically protects the person. So what, if somebody were to be in the house and they were unhappy and wanted to sue you, they couldn't come back to you, they would sue the LLC. That's all an LLC really does. And two, it cash flows the income differently. Some people will create an LLC to file a business tax return versus a personal tax return. If you just have 1 or 2 properties, I don't really know if there's a huge benefit there. If you're doing 10 plus properties, then an LLC is gonna make a lot more sense. On your personal tax return, you can only finance 10, you can only have 10 mortgages in your name, whether that's second home, investment, primary residence, you can only have 10 mortgages. So when you start getting close to that number, that's when you need to sit down with a CPA and look into an LLC.
Okay, so let's see, our questions here. I wanna make sure everybody's questions are answered. Can I buy a primary home and an investment property back to back simultaneously?
Yes. Do them at the same time. It is so easy.
That was their question.
Oh, it is so easy. I can finance both properties, close them even on the same day. It makes your life so much easier. If you qualify for both mortgages. But on this property, we're gonna add in that income probably on the appraisal if you need extra income. But yeah, I would do them at the same time.
So what you would have to have down would be probably more.
Well, you'd have 2 separate loans. So 2 closings, 2 loans, because you have 2 separate collaterals. So this, your primary residence, you only have to put down 5%. We might even be able to finance 100% if you have a 700 or higher credit score. Investment property, you're gonna need 15% down. Are you looking to purchase or refi?
Do what now?
Purchase a primary? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, purchase, and then, yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And then another one. Yeah.
If you do them back to back, that's fine too. I just say stick with the same lender because they're already gonna have, it's going to be so easy to finance real estate back to back. It keeps your life so simple.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The next question, Bill, you had about average vacancy in multifamily. Does it vary per zip code? I don't really have an answer for you, but I do have a couple of property managers that we could talk to. I know from all of my investors and investment work that I've done, nobody's really sitting on vacancies at this time.
Yeah, as far as vacancy for average vacancy for multifamily homes especially, even in a set zip code, you can have drastic fluctuations depending on where that multifamily unit is particularly located. So it's going to be more of a case-by-case basis. One kind of general rule to follow when you are dealing with multifamilies is to try to make sure that 60 to 70% occupancy rate should be covering your mortgage. And everything else above that, ideally, would be going directly to you as income. So if you are looking at a multifamily unit, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, the quadplex is probably going to be the best bang for your buck because you may only need to rent 2 or 3 of those units in order to cover the mortgage. So if you're waiting for that extra unit to get rented, that's just going to be the additional income that you're pulling in. Whereas if it's a duplex, you might still need both of those rented consistently to pay the mortgage month to month. So it's always important to know what the value is, what the cost of that particular property is, and where your tolerance levels can be. So it is kind of a case-by-case basis for something like that.
How do you calculate what your cash reserve should be?
That's a good question.
I would just do, this is my banker brain. So I would just do like a profit and loss essentially and take what are your monthly expenses, what's your monthly income. You literally subtract the 2 to get your net income because that's really what you want to know, like how much am I going to make in profit. So So that's just your expenses minus, your monthly expenses
Yeah,
minus your.
That's just the budget.
Mhm.
I'm talking more factoring in what if you have things that you have to fix, things that, if you have a vacancy.
Right.
Mhm.
Like, obviously, if you have one property, it's different if you have 5, because you're spreading the risk over 5.
Right.
But, or you're multiplying the
Mhm.
risk. But it's kind of like taking principal out, because I don't know if I'm gonna need it.
Mhm.
You know, like a new HVAC system,
Right.
stuff like that, which I actually got to do in the midst of buying my new house on a rental. But it's like, how do I calculate that dollar amount that is a good reserve, that where I can say, okay, I'm comfortable that if I have 50,000 set aside, 30,000, 100,000, I don't know how to do that.
So one thing you can look at is try to imagine absolute worst case scenario with the property. So we have a shortage overall with available rentals inside of the Greensboro area. So it would be somewhat out of the norm to have a property that's not rented for 3 months at a time. I would anticipate absolute worst case scenario. Let's say you're not able to rent that property for 3 months. What's 3 months of mortgage? What would be 3 months of utilities? What would be 3 months of insurance? Also, I would factor in maybe a more nominal fee for if a system breaks. Because of course you're gonna wanna stay on top of your systems, because that can be a very large expense when dealing with rentals. So knowing where your systems stand, making sure you're getting those semi-annual checkups, especially with your HVAC. So I would maybe do 3 months reserves with all of those, maybe plus also factor in the cost of, say, like a water heater. Replacing a water heater is usually gonna cost around $1,000. Have that there just in case, depending on the size of the home. So if we're talking with a 900 square foot home where you've got 1 bathroom, you're probably dealing with a 40-gallon tank. So you're not dealing with a much larger water tank like you would with a 3 or a 4 bath home.
I think I replaced it for like 150 for the water heater and maybe a couple hundred for the installer.
So, I mean, if you can get it for that, great. I would say, just in case, set aside that $1,000.
Yeah.
Because that could be replacing the water heater, that could be replacing the sink, maybe you've gotta do something in the bathroom, maybe you gotta replace a toilet, or.
So you're saying miscellaneous?
Miscellaneous,
$1,000.
yeah. You know, think of that as kind of a slush fund.
But the system one, that's the hard one. What is a reasonable,
HVAC, $10,000.
okay, so keep 10,000 on hand at all times? Or
You know, it depends on how, it would depend on how risk averse you are, right? You know, if it's a major concern for you and you would just sleep better at night having that, I would say go with that. But if you're getting regular checkups on the HVAC system and you've got a specific company and hopefully a specific few technicians that company sends out to your property, they're very well in tune with what's going on with your system. They can let you know where you are in the life cycle of it. If you're walking into something where the HVAC system's already 10 or 15 years old and probably at the end of its life cycle, no amount of preventative maintenance at that point is probably going to stop you from having to replace it within 5 years.
And then you sell it.
Yeah. You know, but if you've got something where maybe it's only got 4 or 5 years of life on it because it was recently replaced,
Yeah.
preventative maintenance can go a long way in a case like that.
All right, that gives me a
cover your
feel
costs.
for it.
Yeah, but that's the easiest way to do it, especially with systems. Roofs, it's really gonna depend on the size of the property. Keep in mind, condos, townhouses, you don't have to worry about the roof. If there's a leak in the roof, if there's an issue with the roof, just report it to the HOA so they can go ahead and get it taken care of for you. Detached residential homes, you know, it really depends on the square footage. With this house being roughly 1,000 square feet, I'd say maybe $5 to $7 grand, depending on the type of shingles that you use, and if anything else needs to be done in the attic space while they're up there.
Okay, that's helpful.
Okay, so next question, impact with rises in interest rates. So I think we've touched on that.
You did.
Okay, all right,
That
multiple.
still comes back to is it profitable?
Right.
Right.
So we haven't talked about different kinds of loans.
Yeah, we can jump down there.
I mean, 30-year mortgage, 15-year mortgage, ARMs, can you speak to those?
Yeah, of course.
Before we get to that,
Yeah,
can
you wanna-
we
Sure.
go to multiple properties at once? You guys had asked that. So is there I think maybe you're asking, is there like a blanket loan for $500,000 and you can just buy
Yeah,
multiple
because-
properties or?
I just have an opportunity, to buy like 6 properties. And so, I mean, he realized I didn't have all the money that he needs for his properties, and so, I'm just trying to see what the options are
Mhm.
to like buy them, because he wants to sell them as a bundle.
Okay.
So you have a property in, you don't have to give us the address because it's your opportunity. But if you would like for us to walk through that, we're happy to.
Okay.
So there's a bundle of homes for X amount of dollars. So how could you purchase that and how
Yeah, 'cause
much
he-
money would you
yeah.
need?
And, I mean, he doesn't, yeah, exactly. I mean, I know what the amount is, and he's been investing all his life, he's just said he's tired of it, and so, you know, I wanna be ready.
Yeah.
They have renters in place.
He does.
Hi, Tiffany. Nice to meet you. Okay.
Okay, he has renters in place, this is all good information. Do you know what the rental income, what he's getting?
Yes, and he uses a property man. Now, one of them is vacant, and I'm actually gonna go see it today, but the person just moved out, but he uses a property management group as well. And they're even better because, they go in quarterly to do inspections, really not even, for no more than just to change the filters in the house. And
Yes.
so that helps to preserve
Have
the
them
life
come
of
out.
those units.
Yeah, see, that is really good, and that's a very good point when looking for a property management company. You do want somebody who is going to visit the property. It's in the lease agreement that they will. So, or make sure it is in the lease agreement. It should be, make sure it is, and that they actually do that. Because you don't wanna walk in the door a year after to find out the ceilings, you know, falling or whatever.
Yes.
Okay, so that scenario right there, Lacey, do you wanna speak to that?
Yeah.
Because you can count that
I
income.
can.
So-
So especially if there's a signed lease like that, we can just use that income, which is great. So I don't have like a blanket loan per se that can do one loan for all the properties because we have all these different collaterals. Say you're buying all 6. So that's where we would do either 6 different loans on each property, or we could look at y'all's primary residence. Do we have equity there? Could we just give you a big lump sum in cash where you can buy some in cash and then maybe finance some? Or we would I'd look at what your current picture looks like and see if there's anything there we can utilize. If not, we would finance each property. I don't
So
have.
would it be like the 15% down for each one? Okay.
It would be, and we would get like an appraisal on each one, and they would each have their own source of income.
Closing could all be done on the same day. I guess.
Closing would be on the same day,
Okay.
yeah, which would be very easy.
Okay.
So you would have to have the 15% down, but as far as feeling like you have to have income to cover each mortgage, she's gonna be able to give you 75% credit
For each of them.
for each of them.
Okay.
And with them using the property management company, they should be able to put you in contact with that property management company. They should have all of the records and the documentation of it to be able to give that to you, so you can supply that.
Yeah.
And make it just an easier transition instead of having to go off of,
Mhm.
you know, what the lease agreement says. You can actually show documented, okay, these people have paid for 12 straight months, these people have paid for 20
Right.
straight months, and everything like that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Best pick.
so this was your question.
Types of
Best way to
loans.
pick a loan, you know, and
Yeah, so I have 2 options. Conventional, which is gonna be that 15% down on investment. Can't do USDA or anything like that on an investment property. But let's say you're buying a duplex and you guys are gonna live in one side and rent out the other. I can do FHA, which you'd only have to put 3.5% down. So I do that a lot because it allows the homeowners to keep a lot of money in their pocket, but they're still able to rent out that other side. So if you have a duplex, triplex, quadplex, and y'all are gonna live in one of them, then we can do, it would be FHA primary purchase. That's the only way to get around the 15% down.
That's will still be valid if we were to get a property like she got at the beach where, you know, you live in one unit on top and rent one at the bottom.
So FHA is strict on, it has to be a townhouse. Has to be a true townhome. So that's where it would be, or a duplex. Or a triplex or quadplex.
But you see, I mean, we don't really have, I mean, is this true? We don't really have a ton of duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes.
Complex is pushing it.
Yeah, you don't really see too many quadplexes in and around the Greensboro area. Duplexes and triplexes somewhat. It really depends on where you are. I mean, there are some scattered in different communities that you might not expect to find. For instance,
Like Stokesdale has a bunch of them.
Stokesdale has quite a few of them. Even that little community, Lake Gang, which is right across from Grimsley, they've got a few duplexes inside of that community. They're kind of pocketed across different areas. What you may find is a lot of the duplexes in and around the Greensboro area might have been built between the 1950s and 1970s. So one good way to kind of look for them is just looking for those homes that are 50, 60 plus years old. You may be able to find them a little bit easier that way. Also, you do tend to find a little bit of them closer to the colleges and universities. There's quite a few right next to a UNCG on the back end of it. There's also a few that are down by High Point University as well. So they are out there, but they require a little bit more looking because they don't come up on the market quite as often.
They're a great opportunity when you can find them. They are.
So how much money down? I think we've covered that. We've talked about Airbnb versus long-term rental. You know, we could go deeper on several of these questions, I guess. And we may do that. You know, I was thinking about maybe having a follow-up class next month to maybe go a little bit deeper. What other questions do you have? We're out of time. We're about out of time, but I want to make sure that you get your questions answered.
Well, my thing was like, if all you have is W-2 income and you want a home, so I think you kind of covered it.
When we can give you, when we do that appraisal.
Appraisal. And then you mentioned about the, if not the, we said this is conventional.
Oh, if you were to do FHA, you would just have to live in one side if you did the duplex, but yes.
Okay.
Anything else?
Any other questions?
A lot of good stuff today.
Yes. So who's ready to go out and buy an investment property?
Start shopping.